We want to thank you all for coming to the VSBA Technology Summit. I'm Juan Diego Wade. I'm president of VSBA and a proud member of the City of Charlottesville School Board. And you know, we had our monthly meeting last night. It only went 3 hours. I felt good. I felt like I'd come out and see Pittsburgh lose. But anyway, it's good to be here this morning with you. I want to thank you all for coming this morning. And by attending today's event, you all will learn how to integrate new technology into your schools and gain new insight on the next big thing that's coming to virtual and blended learning. I would now like to ask Dr. Marcus Newsom to come up. He's a superintendent for Chesterfield County Schools to bring the greeting.
We are so pleased that you are here in Chesterfield County, and I want to thank VSBA and specifically Gina Patterson for giving me the opportunity to welcome you this morning. I'd like to start out by taking a moment of personal privilege to introduce my two board representatives, our school board chair, Carrie Corner, and our vice chair, Diane Smith. Thank you for being here as well. And this topic of technology is certainly relevant for all of us. It's, for us, we feel it is a game changer in the education of public education for students across this country and certainly here in the Commonwealth. So in just the few moments that I have here, I want to show you one slide that I think represents our 300+ page strategic plan. And I try to consolidate it in that picture right here. Our plan is based on 3 big ideas: blended learning, project-based learning, and service learning. And last year, I was over at one of our middle schools where they had a maker's lab, and the students were working on this prosthetic hand. Through the use of a 3D printer, it was part of their blended learning. It was a class project, and then the service learning means that the project has to be relevant to their community and has to improve the quality of life in their community. And so when I saw this news clip on television of this young girl in a neighboring county who was the beneficiary of the work that these students had done in designing this prosthetic hand, and this young lady said she thought she would never experience the sensation of having another hand. This is where we are in education, and without the technology, this wouldn't be available for this young lady. And she has been so inspired that now she is trying to work with other groups to make this type of gift available for other young people in her circumstance. And so it is spreading. My last piece of business here is some of you may not be able to stay around for the tour. We hope you can all stay. But just in case you can't, I have a very brief virtual tour of this building. We are very proud. And so several years ago, I was working with a group of students, and I asked them, if you could design the high school of the future, what would it look like? And so they talked about a school that would provide courses that are relevant for them, that would prepare them for life beyond high school, where they would have marketable skills, where they would have exposure to technology and 21st century learning, and free from SOLs. Well, actually, they don't take SOLs in this building. They go back to their home school for that part. But so this is not just a school for students, but as you can see, this is a conference center, and it is also a central office for administrators, where we have gone to, we actually went to CarMax, to the headquarters, to look at a new ergonomic type of setting so that we could have more flexible, more informal meeting space. And so this is one of our central office spaces upstairs. These are where some of our leaders meet. More collaborative space. You're in the conference center right now that was a former gymnasium. Across the hall, you see the auditorium. And this is the space for our students. This is the common space upstairs for our students in our career and technical education program. This is the lobby space outside. And then when we look at some of the programs, when you come out, you'll probably smell some of the pastries that the students are working on in the culinary arts, the baking program, biotechnology, nursing, veterinarian science, firefighting. We're right next door to a fire station where we have the actual firefighters work with our students, and they have donated a fire engine for our students to work with. Barbering. Sports medicine is really big, and physical and occupational therapy. Mechatronics is new to our school district, and that's kind of a combination of engineering and robotics. This equipment comes from overseas. Global logistics and homeland security. Finally, we have an alternative program for overage 8th graders. And we wanted to show them that their education was just as valuable as anyone else. And so we have actually brought them into this school as 8th graders so that they could be exposed to some of the career and technical education opportunities. And if you got here early this morning, you saw some students, 8th graders out here. The adults upstairs, along with mega mentors, actually mentor these students as well. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for them. And again, we're so thankful that you're here this morning. Have a great conference.
It's now my opportunity, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Susan Patrick is President and CEO of Internal Association for K-12 Online Learning. Susan, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm with the International Association for K-12 Online Learning. We are a nonprofit that has been around for 10 years. Before that, I was the Director of Educational Technology at the U.S. Department of Education, and I've been studying trends around the United States, but also globally, on what the future of education looks like, and I'm honored to be able to be here today and share some of those findings. I know when you're in your own schools and your own communities, sometimes it's hard to know what's happening across the Commonwealth, much less what's going on in other states or other countries. But the world is changing very rapidly. Was it last week? I was in Moscow, Russia. Despite all the things that are going on geopolitically, their Ministry of Education is moving very, very quickly in pushing forward the opportunities that are available for their students, both in K-12 and higher ed, and was Skyping 2 nights ago, late in the evening, about 10 o'clock, with the Ministry of Education in Singapore, where 100% of their schools are online using blended learning, really thinking about how they push personalized learning opportunities that are tied in to their community for relevance. I was really inspired to see that slide from Dr. Newsom, and really thrilled about what we're starting to see in innovative school districts across the Commonwealth of Virginia, and certainly here in Chesterfield. So thank you, Dr. Newsom, for the work and the sustained leadership and vision that you've provided here. So let me go ahead and get started. I'm gonna give you a quick snapshot. Our organization is a nonprofit, and as I look around the room, many of the school districts across Virginia have been longtime members of iNACOL. How many of you run online learning programs in your school districts? And many of these districts that started with online learning, Virginia Beach, Arlington, Alexandria, Beaufort, all over the state, are moving more and more towards blended learning environments where we take the best of online learning and bring those into our classrooms so that we can power a modern way of looking at where every student is, but also expanding the resources and the opportunities. We work with practitioners around the country, but we also work with policymakers at the local, state, and federal level. We're working very hard right now on the ESEA reauthorization. That's the old No Child Left Behind, trying to align this with more student-centered learning instead of just having an accountability system that ranks our schools, trying to get one that supports continuous improvement and supports student-centered learning with a modern approach also to how we think about accountability. So our community is made up of school leaders, teachers, practitioners, districts, even foundations, philanthropists that are interested in what the future of education looks like. So when we think about online learning, blended learning, even traditional learning environments, at the core of our goal is to create more student-centered learning environments. The mission of our organization is to ask, how can we ensure every student has access to world-class education? And what does that look like today? Because it is changing around the globe. I'm going to do a quick snapshot of some of the things that are happening globally. You may have seen this story in the New York Times. This is Bator. He's a 15-year-old in Mongolia. In Ulan, Bator, the principal of this school wanted to give students more access to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So the students, the 15-year-old students in this school, enrolled in MIT's open course on circuits and electronics. This is a sophomore level MIT course. The principal put a circuits and electronics laboratory in the school so the students could do hands-on labs. There were 150,000 students around the globe enrolled in this massively open online course. And my presentation is not about MOOCs, but it's about what is happening globally. And just to give you a snapshot, so Bator was one of 340 students globally to earn a perfect score in this course. And when he was interviewed in this New York Times article, it was about, I had no idea I was capable of that. Bator said, this was a watershed moment for me. MIT contacted him. Now it's his backup school. He's being recruited by the leading technology universities from around the world, MIT, Harvard, others. And Bator went on to translate these videos in the course from English into Mongolian so his other students across Mongolia can access it. Now, if you think about who the real hero in this story is, it's the principal and the teachers that had the vision to bring those opportunities to students. In India, they have a goal to increase access to K-12 education and provide universal access for all students. In order to do that, they'd have to build 200,000 new school buildings, which they can't afford to do. So what are they doing? They have internationally benchmarked academic standards, provided digital content aligned to those academic standards, and they are training their best teachers and even opening up what they're called micro schools around communities where students can access the internet, have access to tutors, access to online teachers. So they're training their best teachers to teach online and creating a different distribution network. In the meantime, the government invested in what was to be a $10 tablet to increase access to devices and the internet. They got the price point down to about $35 in 2011, and they had just distributed 10 million. There are hundreds of millions of students that are accessing education in India, benchmarked again at a world-class level, that have never had it. They still have a long way to go, but the kinds of innovations and the change in who has access to education around the globe is changing very, very quickly and dramatically. Technology is not just being layered on old environments, it's fundamentally being used to reach strategies for global competitiveness across the world. In Hong Kong, they've made a shift from textbooks to digital content in all of their schools. In South Korea, they've made the shift from using digital textbooks to digital content. They're also very invested in their learning models in Korea to have tutors available in their schools and also outside of schools using online tutoring 24/7. So when students start to struggle, they can access and get extra help. The Futurist, and this is from the World Bank, is showing that China may be the first country globally to educate the majority of their population using a combination of online learning and blended learning. They have a goal in China. When I was in Moscow, that Chinese government was doing a presentation, have a goal to reach 100 million more students in the next 10 years with access to education. Now, China's got a huge population. Like, how many students do we have in the entire United States in K-12 education? 50 million. The number of students that are at the highest level of gifted and talented in China is over 60 million. We can't afford to have a single one of our students not educated at a high level in this country. So this is another one of our members. The International Baccalaureate Program in 2006 said, how do we increase access to IB? How many of you have IB diploma programs in your schools, in your school districts? IB in 2006 said, what if we get some investment from some philanthropy, digitize our courses, and not just move them online, but rethink every bit of curriculum, put gold standard online courses, train our teachers how to use the technology platforms and teach courses, and they got 26 different countries to sign on to the International Baccalaureate Program online. Now, there are over 125 countries involved in IB diploma program online. Some states and districts in the US are using this too, but think about this. No longer limited by geography or the number of slots you might have in a particular program in your school. Every single student who is interested in IB online could have access today, just flipping a switch and enrolling. And these students not only learn the same rigorous material and practice their language skills and fluency, but they're interacting with students globally. They're sharing ideas, they're posting their essays, they're in online communications with students around the globe. So this is a school that I visited last year in Spain, and this is a middle school. What they're doing is project-based learning, challenge-based learning. They've been given a goal of creating from scratch. There are just boxes of materials, circuits, different, from scratch, an electric car using any materials that they want. They're using their iPads here just to go in, find on their own the websites and constructing it. When they're done with this, there were some students that had finished. They make a movie trailer, they video, they write up scripts for the process that they went through and document it. So there's this whole creative movement that you see across schools in Europe. And in Spain, they're feeling a lot of pressure from their next door neighbor, Germany, which is very highly regarded for their design work and engineering, and trying to build at a young age into students understanding how important design is, how to do engineering, how to bring together the math standards, the English language arts standards, and some of the STEM standards to build out and create and become the designers that they'll need to be in the future. So this was from just on the side of the wall, but it's the flipped classroom. They're doing project-based learning. They're doing relevant and real challenge-based learning, project-based learning. So this is a snapshot of some schools in England, and you've got students across 2 different grade levels in here working on different projects together, and they're doing competency-based approaches where students are digging in, they understand their learning targets, they're showing what they know, they're able to pick how they learn, what content they use, and get to high levels of mastery. So that's just a quick snapshot of some of the things that are happening around the globe, but there are 10 big trends that we're seeing that are driving the future of education. And number 1 is certainly online learning and blended learning, but it's not just about taking the class the way we're 50 years ago, or a traditional, here's your textbook, you go on assignments, you get A, B, C, D, F, you go on to the next grade, and that's it. No, online learning is about powering a new approach to learning that is focused on demonstrating mastery, giving students additional pathways to personalize their own learning experience that's relevant, and even draw from the communities, getting involved in internships, getting involved in volunteering, being able to pull those back and demonstrate the knowledge in your schools. So online and blended learning is a driver of a student-centered, competency-based approach. Personalized learning, where students have voice and choice in how they approach their lessons and how they demonstrate that knowledge. Student-centered learning, which is understanding where every student is when they come into a program and being able to maximize that powerful learning experience for them. Mobile learning, anytime, any place. project-based and challenge-based approaches. The use of adaptive technologies is going to change what learning looks like dramatically over the next 10 years. We're just starting to see how adaptive technologies can be used to better serve students' needs. So bridging formal and informal learning, that is inside of school, outside of school, awarding credit. This is just starting to happen in a few places, but how do you think about the way we do for Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts as you do service learning, getting credit for that badging? This idea is starting to take off where students can go in certain areas that interest them and bring back and get that knowledge certified within their own experience towards a high school diploma. Competency-based and performance-based learning where students demonstrate that mastery with evidence, and a student personalized learning plan for every student that shows a whole portfolio of their knowledge. They take that with them to college or into their careers. So we'll talk a little bit more about online and blended learning in the United States. So when we talk about online and blended learning, we're talking about not just software, we're talking about people first. So when I talk about online learning, I'm talking about teacher-led instruction, teachers that are trained to use, that are given professional development to use technology platforms to collaborate with students. We're talking about the technology platforms, online content, and assessments that are delivered online. So these can be in a classroom, they can be anytime, any place. Education that is primarily delivered over the internet but is teacher-led. And there are online schools, there are online programs. And I know the next speaker from Virtual Virginia, which by the way, there are 32 states that have state virtual schools, and Virtual Virginia is one of the absolute best in the country. The quality of education they deliver in the online courses are excellent. I'm thrilled that they'll be expanding to offer full-time online options through Virtual Virginia, and I think that's what the next speaker is going to be talking about. So that's just a preview. 32 states have state virtual schools. States like North Carolina and Florida has over 300,000 enrollments, and these are enrollments in individual courses. So students all over the state have access to a whole range of more than 100 different courses, again, taught by state licensed teachers, working with students across the state. And this is just an idea of the relative sizes of these different online learning programs across the country. Now, in all 50 states, there are school districts that have their own programs. There are 13,000 school districts across the US, and about 82% of them, 82% offer online courses and blended learning environments. So this is no longer on the fringe. This is very much moved into the mainstream. Like, some districts offer thousands and thousands of enrollment. Some districts are just serving particular student needs. So some of this data is shocking. It came out from the Office of Civil Rights in the US Department of Education. 50% of high schools in the United States do not have a licensed calculus teacher, don't offer calculus. You think about competitiveness for getting into our nation's colleges and universities. There are huge gaps. It's 62%, it's 60-something% of our high schools don't offer physics. And if you look even at a different level for advanced courses, which is defined by anything over Algebra 2, 25% of our nation's high schools don't offer advanced coursework. So those kinds of gaps can be, and I think should be solved. We have a solution to it using technology, but it's really about leveraging our great teachers and giving them instruction for teaching online so that students can have access. So when you look at this slide, it's about the defining dimensions of online learning programs. So they can be in a particular school. They can be, online programs can be just serving a particular district. There are programs that are multi-district where districts are collaborating together to share teachers and sort of barter enrollment slots. And then there are statewide programs like Virtual Virginia. There are some multi-state and national programs like Virtual High School that go across 35 different states. Well, this is just to say, when you hear the term online learning, there are a lot of questions and policy that might come up. Like, is this program just serving our district or one particular school, or what's the breadth of it? Some programs are focused on high school or high school and middle school. There are elementary programs that are across the US too. So online learning takes many shapes and sizes. Some have high teacher to student interaction like Virtual Virginia does, some have less. So these are important questions and considerations when designing a program. So there are more than 2 million enrollments in K through 12 education. And there are even universities that are offering online courses. So you may not know this, but Stanford University has an online high school. They have, I think it's 9 million enrollments in this online high school. It's a huge program. It's mostly serving highly gifted students in rural areas that can't get access to the education that they want. Northwestern, Johns Hopkins University has online gifted programs. 50% of employers do workforce development and training using e-learning too. So this is seen as a skill to help prepare students. And 1 in 3 college students takes an online course while they're on campus, usually for the flexibility in their scheduling. So these new solutions through online learning, 40% of high schools that don't offer AP courses are using online learning as a selection, as a way to expand access to AP. 60% of school districts are using online learning for credit recovery. So why, think about this. You saw the huge number of enrollments in Florida. We have students that are struggling all over the country. And number 1 enrollment in most online learning programs is Algebra 1. Why? Because kids struggle with Algebra 1. Why do we let them go through an entire semester and an entire year and then fail and then have to go back to summer school? As soon as they're not doing well, if they're not hitting mastery of it, in Florida, they go and they enroll in Florida Virtual School. They make up the gaps that they're missing, and then they're able to catch up. And guess what? They're able to finish and catch back up by the end of the school year and get back on track. Well, why do we spend all of that money to have students go through an entire year and then go to summer school, have an experience as a failure, and then have them get behind? We can get them caught up as soon as we know. So there's a huge growth. We just put out a paper on promising practices in online credit recovery. I will say the quality of online credit recovery varies a lot. It's really focused on high quality environments with student supports where students are demonstrating mastery at a high level before advancing. So this is about equity. It's about providing opportunities for all students. And there are different reasons that these programs meet students' needs. Some are aspiring athletes and performers. One of the first online programs in Seattle back in the 90s, Apollo Ono, Olympic athlete, was in an online program in Federal Way School District. There are students that are homebound, medically fragile, advanced and gifted students, students that are falling behind and struggling and want to accelerate and catch up. So when you think about the online learning programs in your districts, it's really about what are the learning goals that we're trying to achieve. Are you just trying to level the playing field and ensure every student in your district has access to AP or an international baccalaureate program or online Mandarin Chinese or languages? Or are you trying to help students have access to maybe more dynamic content and curriculum, new ways of learning math, science, and other subjects? So the research on online learning, when you ask students, the number 1 reason that they like it is because they can work at their own pace. They can move forward a little faster if they're ready. They can take more time if they're struggling. And we all know that not all students move the exact same pace in the exact same way every single day. So half of students are taking online courses even to earn college credit. They're dual enrollment programs with community colleges and universities or AP courses. Many students are taking courses that are not offered at their school, but I thought the last 2, even though those percentages are lower, students are taking online learning to get extra help or to get more attention from teachers. And you don't think about that, but when you talk to teachers that teach online, they will tell you how well they get to know and interact with their students, which is counterintuitive, but it's really hard in a traditional classroom with 25 students with a single textbook for a teacher to be able to personalize instruction. And this is a way that they can really interact and get to know their students. We've published national quality standards for online teaching, for online courses, and for online programs. And I'm just gonna hit blended learning and then I'll open it up for some questions here to keep us on time. So blended learning is defined by Michael Horn as a formal education program in which students are learning at least partially through online learning with some student control over pace, path, time, and place. And it's at least partially in a school, but the modalities are connected to provide an integrated learning experience. So it's not just, blending learning is not just sticking an electronic whiteboard at the front of the classroom where everybody's doing the same thing at the same time and it's simply teacher-led, or putting down a bunch of devices where everybody's still sitting in rows going at the exact same pace. That's tech integration, and that can be useful for some things, especially if you have a rock star teacher doing magic in the front of the classroom. But when we're talking about blended learning, we are talking about the student-centered. Every student's needs are identified, pinpointed. There is much more use for data for knowing where every student is every single day, and much more creativity in how they do it. Now, this may not look like the most creative learning environment. This is a school in Arizona, but they have so many content resources for every learning standard. The teachers and the students are negotiating, co-designing how they're gonna learn each lesson. The students work both independently, and around the outside you can't see these small groups, small classrooms coming up with project ideas. But this looks a lot more like some of the modern workplaces. When you talk to students, you can't even see where the teacher is in this room, but their teacher is working with students, students working independently. This is much more what they're gonna need, the skills that they're gonna need when they go to college and into careers too. This is an elementary school in Los Angeles that went from having under 30% literacy and reading proficiency for their students to the highest elementary school in all of the state of California in terms of over 90% literacy in just 3 years. What are they doing? Teachers are working with small groups with students, but they're also pinpointing. Every day when students come in, they can pinpoint where that literacy, where they need extra help, and they're getting help. So it's a combination of a new learning environment, lots of data for students, for teachers, and being able to, when you start to fill in those gaps that kids have when they come in, and all students can accelerate. It's growth mindset. All students can learn at high levels, but learning is dependent on prior learning, and so you've got to work and have environments that fill in those gaps. So this is Khan Academy implementation in 5th grade in an elementary school in Los Altos, California. And they have these maps. How many people are familiar with Khan Academy? So there are videos, but it's not just videos. The most important, I think, or the most interesting part of Khan Academy is they built out these learning progressions. They almost look like a galaxy on the way that math concepts are integrated. And when a student is working on it and struggling, it will pinpoint and show some of the other earlier learning progressions that they may be struggling with, so the students can get extra help. That's the power of online and blended learning, and being able to pinpoint where every single student is across their learning progressions every day. And there were some students in this course that were able to accelerate in 5th grade. They went through the 5th grade curriculum, the 6th grade curriculum, up to Algebra, and one student actually started trig. Now, what happened at the end of 5th grade? They had to take the California assessment for 5th grade. They were already on trigonometry, right? This is what I mean about, I'm not even going to go there on policy, but aligning policy to say, if you are maximizing the learning for every student, if you've got kids coming in 2 grade levels below and you're able to bring them up 1.7 grade levels, shouldn't you get some credit for that, right? And if you're allowed to move every single student. So what if we were what if we had metrics like maximizing how much learning for every student every day, or how much learning is happening per unit of time, right? And not allowing achievement gaps to open, but our current accountability system actually masks the size of the achievement gap, because we know we've got kids coming into 9th grade at a 3rd grade or a 5th grade reading or math level, and we're still fire hosing them with the 9th grade content. Well, we need to fill in those gaps. We know brain research, how kids learn. We need to fill in those gaps and get them caught up, and we can get them caught up and not only on track, but accelerate. Whereas if we continue with our current system and not addressing those gaps, we leave kids with Swiss cheese full gaps in their whole learning. And when they go off to college, we know we have 40% of kids that graduate from high school and go to college require remediation in reading and math as a country, right? Let's change our system and focus on ensuring every student has the skills that they need to succeed. And these are some tools that will help us get there. So I'm getting ready to wrap up here, but just online learning is inherently modular, and this is what some of the data from the Khan Academy looks like, which is you've got students at the beginning of the year that are higher up, that are further ahead. You've got some kids, like this blue line, that are really far behind. But what happens is, it may take them longer, it may take them more time, but as they get caught up, and as they fill in those gaps, look where that blue line goes. That student that was one of the furthest behind becomes in the top 3 of their class because they're able to take more time when they need it, and they're able to accelerate once they get it and get caught up. And this is the power, and this is why online and blended learning is so important, because there is no reason in any of our schools, if we can change the instructional model around doing what's right for every kid every day, we can use this data and give them powerful learning experiences that are relevant, that are meaningful. But success is the only option. Failure should not be an option. We need to switch our system around to ensure that every student is successful. So adaptive learning is going to really change what is possible in education. And I said it's just beginning right now. But when you hear the term adaptive technology, you need to ask to what end. So some adaptive technologies, number one, do leveling. So if a student comes into 9th grade and you have an adaptive assessment that levels, you can look at their literacy level, and that allows you to pinpoint and really work with those students and get them caught up. So leveling is one term on understanding where a student is when they come in, and ongoing. Number 2, real-time scaffold is another kind of adaptive technology, or in-course corrections. So a student struggling, and an adaptive technology can provide in-course corrections, can offer, maybe you need to try A, B, and C to fill in those gaps, get this corrected, get some extra practice time, and then move ahead. But that's different from leveling. Number 3 is minimizing the effort or number of problems worked. So if you really like the student in the middle of that graph, really starting to get it, I get it, you can move through the pathway at an accelerated rate. Number 4 is a limitless pathway. So an adaptive technology can give you the next sequential piece on the pathway or progression. You can keep moving ahead, you can keep moving ahead. And again, that's different from the others. And then the last is adaptive technology can be a recommendation engine. So the system might recommend 5 different kinds of content or pieces of content tied to that academic standard based on the student's interests or needs. And the reason that may be too in the weeds, but people just talk about, oh, we're using an adaptive piece of software. Like, what does that actually mean, and how does that fit into your instructional model? So this is a school in Denver Public Schools called Grant Beacon. If you're ever out in Denver, I highly recommend visiting it. This is a blended science classroom. So you have students working across 6 different standards on projects on their own. We're just coming in and just love the fact that these students are all engaged in talking to their teacher about what they're going to work on, what they're interested in. Again, co-designing their learning goals every single day in partnership with their teacher. This is a math classroom in the same school. Now what's interesting is it's highly flexible. You've got some students that are doing small group instruction, the board with teachers. You've got others that are working on certain lessons that they're struggling with. They have others that are working together on some projects. And in the time I was in this room, these students all shifted depending on where they were and when they were moving. The other thing that's cool about this is that teachers on their open period, on their break period, their planning periods, have some extra desks so they can come in and see how other teachers are teaching in these environments. So they're constantly learning and sharing with each other. This is a school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. What you can't see around the outside are these small groups working on semester-long projects. And so again, this reminds me of when I've toured Google or Yahoo or some of the modern workplaces. Students are working on their own learning goals every day, producing a lot of projects, producing a lot of their own evidence of their work. So I'll just end here. This is Summit High School in San Francisco Bay Area, and you have students again working on their learning objectives, designing with their teachers what they're going to do. And I love this. They have a sign up, assessment is always open. They have like a Genius Bar, if you've been to the Apple Store, Genius Bar, where there are always teachers and tutors ready to help every student as soon as they need the help. But when they work with their teacher and say, this is my learning goal for today, this is how I'm going to learn it, I got it, now I'm ready to show it. So assessment is always open. They're not people, they're not kids in desks in line doing some scan test. They are demonstrating their knowledge as soon as they're ready, and then they're moving on to the next one. So I know that was a quick snapshot around the globe and around the US of what's happening with the future of education and online and blended learning, but this is really about what can we do to design learning environments based on the research on how kids learn, right? Let's take the research, we know how kids learn, and let's design instructional models that meet every student's needs. And guess what? It's really hard to do without technology, but none of this is about technology. It's about filling in gaps and ensuring every student is successful. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you. So we have time for questions? Okay, great, super. Any questions? Yeah, what's interesting is, so thank you, the questions around the learning spaces and actually the design of the learning spaces and what we're learning. And first of all, a shout out for Ulan. I just saw that the data quality campaign gave you guys an award for effective data use. So kudos to you on that. So it's interesting. This is a great example here. Here's a school that has been here for how many years, and it's been able to be renovated and retrofitted to have a really modern, flexible learning space. And we're seeing across the country, obviously some new school designs. If you've ever been to High Tech High in San Diego, it's just mind-blowing. That was designed from the ground up in flexibility and use of space. So I would say like some key tenets are flexibility and allowing students to group and regroup. We were also partners with the Gates Foundation on the Next Generation Learning Challenge grants, and they have an evaluation component along with highly personalized blended models. But in the first evaluation round, the evaluators asked the teachers and the students what the teacher-to-student ratio was. Now, they knew on average it was 1 to 27, but the students said it's 1 to 1 or 1 to 8 because they were constantly working one-on-one or 1 to 8. There was some whole group instruction, but we need more new language. But if you think about the impact of that instructional model, what does the furniture need to work like? It needs to be highly flexible. It needs to have multi-use for spaces. But we're seeing even old buildings being able to be reconceived and reconfigured in that way. So It's nice to have the opportunity or the luxury of building something from scratch, but that shouldn't get in the way of designing the instructional model or the learning environment. Other questions? Yes. So the schools and the districts that I've seen advance personalized learning the most really have their hands tied with the current accountabilities. I mean, everybody does, but they're essentially running two parallel universes of accountability. They're running their own accountability with personalized learning, and guess what? They have more data and more transparency and can really use that for their own benefit to help support teachers, to help bring more educator supports. They have more data on student learning. They can really target and focus and way better data and benchmarking than the current accountability system, but they still have to use the current accountability system. So personalized learning, data-rich environment, current accountability system, end of year, age batch, grade batch, testing, where you're limited to really focusing on that. That's actually a very data poor environment. And like, what's the one thing in that environment? When I'm traveling around, so I travel 50 out of 52 weeks a year, and I'm all over the US. Like, I was in an airport talking to somebody. I did not say what I did, but some guy was like visibly upset. And he said, oh, my son just had to take these tests. He's like, this makes no sense. This is the one test that doesn't matter for the kid, right? There's no teeth in it for the kid. But it just like forces our entire system. So now here's the good news. There are a group of states. The Council of Chief State School Officers are like the Secretary of Education or the school superintendents. But there's a group of 12 states in the Innovation Lab Network, which I believe the Commonwealth of Virginia just joined. 3 of those states, New Hampshire and Kentucky, and I believe Ohio, but New Hampshire and Kentucky are furthest ahead, are working on developing a new accountability system that's built on multiple assessments and performance-based assessments that will be a truly student-centered accountability model. And New Hampshire just got permission from the US Department of Education to start piloting this. It's called the PACE program. If we can get in the next 5 years 3 or 5 states that have really solid accountability models that are student-centered, that focus on equity, that focus on closing the achievement gap, that have the data that you need to see that are much more aligned with personalized learning, our country is going to be in a much better place. Right now, in the Senate version of the ESEA, there is a pilot program for a competency-based assessment pilot, which is really encouraging, and states will be able to get into that. We're trying to get the language in the House version with Klein stepping down from the chairmanship, and then there's a lot of dynamics over in the US House of Representatives that are gonna make ESEA a challenge, but at least I am really encouraged by the conversations that we're having with staffers and leaders. If we can just open up space for a new assessment and accountability pilot that is truly personalized and student-centered, we're going to be in a much better place and have a much better set of conversations around accountability than we've been having over the last 10 or 20 years. So on that note, I'm encouraged, be optimistic, and thank you for all of the great work that you're doing across the state.
This is what we want. We want to kind of spark discussion and make this a tool for you all to use. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Gail Warren. She's the Supervisor of Curriculum and Student Services with Virtual Virginia. And she's getting all suited up there. Thank you so much for joining us, Gail.
Good morning, thank you. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here, Susan. I want to thank you for that insightful perspective on the global online and blended learning. I'm hoping to bring it to a more Virginia perspective here. I work with Virtual Virginia, as far as the student service portion of it, as well as the curriculum part. But also I have a special role that really I enjoy. I get to work with the Department of Education and the Governor's Office on special technology projects. And it's amazing how all of these things play into what we're doing here at Virtual Virginia. I'm going to start off by giving you a cursory overview of our program, have lots of data to share with you, and then I'm going to share some exciting things that have come about this year and some things that are getting ready to be hot off the press as of today. So I want to share those with you. And please feel free to stop me and ask questions. I'd love to have the interaction there. Well, first of all, Virtual Virginia, for those of you who are not familiar with our program, we are a program of the Department of Education. With that, the inception of Virtual Virginia began in about 2002. And that was brought about by the need for us to have alternatives for students. And when I mean alternatives, I mean online options for students for curriculum. As far as AP courses that were not offered in their school divisions, it may have been lack of budgetary constraints that brought about that need, world languages and electives. And this year, and I'm going to spend a little more time in just a few moments sharing this, we've actually added a full-time online pilot option this year. And so I'm excited to tell you about that in just a few moments. Whoop. There we go. Okay, our mission, and I've kind of alluded to this already, our mission is to serve the students of the state of Virginia. We do have students outside of the state of Virginia, but our large population, the majority, is here in Virginia. We do offer, like I mentioned before, our advanced placement courses, and we offer pretty much almost every advanced placement course the College Board has set out to have there. Also, we are offering our core academic courses this year, as well as electives. Our world language courses have really exploded in the last few years. We do partner with your school divisions across the state. Over the last several years, we know we have actually worked with every school division, all 132 across the state, and we pride ourselves on that. And we really are a partnership. We know that each school division is unique in nature, and so we try to make special accommodations. We work with your superintendents, we work with the site administrators, the principals, we work very closely with the guidance department because they're an integral part. One other special role that we have at Virtual Virginia is that we work with mentors. That's a requirement to be a part of our program. And a mentor acts as a liaison between our teacher, myself, other administrators, and the school, as well as the parent. Plays a very key role there. And that's unique. Some programs, online programs, do not have that feature. We feel like it's really necessary, and it's become a key component there. Communication and real-time instruction. That's one thing, Susan, you alluded to earlier, that the statistics say that students actually feel closer to their online provider. And I've actually talked to students about this over the last several years, and I think it's a sense of security when you can talk with someone individually and get to know them, and the conversations there. So I hear that feedback from parents as well that are involved, their children are involved in our program. I see that quite a bit. Real time, that's probably an interesting perspective that we have there. We have many of our components of our program are asynchronous, but many of our components are synchronous as well. We have, and I'll share that data in just a minute, we have teachers real time who communicate with students across the state in many different modes of communication. It may be Skype, it may be pager, it may be email, it may be by phone. Lots of modes of communication. So we are serving those needs of those students in an asynchronous component because a student has access to the content 24/7, 365 days a year, as long as that student's enrolled in the course. So a very unique environment. I think that's where that builds that sense of trust. Supplemental course program. We do have a supplemental course program that I'm going to allude to in just a minute. I'm going to move ahead on that. Our courses and curriculum, something I'm very familiar with. Of course, our courses are aligned to Virginia SOLs, very important, especially with our new full-time pilot, which is going to encompass grades 9 through 12. We're authorized by the College Board. Every year the College Board picks a few courses to audit, and when they do that, we hire a team of experts in their content area, and we actually completely revamp that course to align. So our students are ready for the future career-wise, and they have those skills there. NCA approved as well. That's really important. Like you mentioned, we do have students that are enrolled in our program that are athletes, that are going on to play collegiate sports. And so that's really important. That's become a huge focus, and we make sure that we're in line with those as well. As far as the nature of our program, there are many different ways, media-rich items that we have there, student presentations, projects. Like I said, the mode of communication there, we also use a platform called Blackboard Collaborate, which is a web-based program where teachers and students can get together in small groups real time and actually work out problems on a whiteboard just like you would do in a brick and mortar classroom. So there may be a student in Henry County, and there may be a student in Virginia Beach, and there may be a student in Loudoun County, all together working. And that's a very powerful tool for a student. There may be a student who has some medical issues that they can't attend school, but they get to have that interaction, which is very important. And we hear lots of great feedback about that. One thing that we're very proud of, and this is kind of an accurate number now, offered 56 courses. We did offer 56 courses last year, but we're adding to that with the addition of our online program. Often we get questions about our teachers. All of our teachers that work for us, we have 66 this year, they are Virginia licensed teachers. And I will say I've been in education for the better part of 20 years, mostly in the K-12 environment, but a decade in the collegiate environment as well, and I have never worked with a group of teachers like we have. It's a very unique individual who can take their skills and their content knowledge and their expertise and present it in a way that really is successful with the student. And I will say, it's not for everyone, it's not for all teachers, but we pride ourselves that our teachers are just top-notch and fantastic at what they do. They're licensed, of course, endorsement and subject area. They're trained in online instruction, and that's really important. We work with iNACOL and different organizations as well to make sure that our teachers have the latest skill set that they need to be successful in that environment, and they certainly are successful in that environment. An interesting bit of data here is the average student teaching ratio is 109 to 1. I can tell you, I get questions every day that, well, why can't the teacher take 500 students? I don't understand. It's an online course. Like I mentioned, our program is very unique. We pride ourselves on providing service to the students. So our teachers really play the role of a brick and mortar teacher, but in an online platform. So our teachers work individually with students. They work with small groups. So it's we very much pride ourselves that that is a ratio that we maintain. We have a couple of teachers who have a few more. We have a couple of teachers who have a few less. It just depends on the cycle. And when I mention the cycle, I mean each year we see trends of some years our world languages are highly subscribed courses. Given the budgetary constraints, some world languages their programs are being cut in school divisions, as you are well aware. AP courses. Our AP courses have skyrocketed in the last few years because we offer things that your school divisions cannot afford to offer, which is a service that we pride ourselves on. Just some background data here. Virginia students, people ask this question all the time. Our Virginia population here is Virginia Public Schools, about 10,000, a little over 10,000. We have a few private school students. And this number is going to be different this year. Our Virginia homeschool students, a small number there, and out of state. Typically out of state are our courses that really no one across the nation, as Susan alluded to earlier, no one across the nation is offering those. And to be competitive in the work environment, career readiness, they have to be able to have those courses. And so we're offering those. Enrollment map. This is just kind of a color-coded map here that shows, and this does vary from year to year. Some years the school division will see the need to hire an AP European history teacher because they have a large population of juniors or seniors who need that course or want that course for graduation. So it does fluctuate, but this is just a quick cursory overview of our population for 2014, 2015. And you can see it varies. Enrollment by category. Again, this is going to be something that's going to be very different next year as well. Our world language is about 9% of our population is enrolled in our world language courses. 22% are advanced placement, and our standard courses, and by that I mean electives and our world languages. Some of our world languages will fall in that category as well if they're not labeled the AP distinction. This is just a listing of our standard courses that we offer here. Some of those you'll see mirror what you offer in your brick and mortar school, but because of a student's scheduling, sometimes a student can't take it within their schedule. They may be in a technology track or a career ready track at the school, and the course is not offered during their time. So we are very accommodating and provide that flexibility that the student would not have in a regular brick and mortar classroom as well. Our advanced placement courses that are here. We try to make sure that we cover. I think the only AP course that we don't offer now is there's an AP accounting course, and I believe there's an AP German world language course that we don't offer, and studio art as well. That's another one. We would love to be able to offer those. With our budgetary constraints, just like yours, we're a program of the Department of Education. We try to add courses, and we have requests all the time, and so we're trying to accommodate those requests as well. Economics and personal finance. I'm sure many of you have heard about our economics and personal finance course. A few years ago, this became a graduation requirement, economic competency and knowledge. And so with that, we were prompted, and it was mainly under the Department of Education with the help of Virtual Virginia, we created a very robust course labeled Economics and Personal Finance. And so with that being a graduation requirement, that opened up opportunities for school divisions to really analyze the way they were looking at how they were going to offer that course. With that came some other issues that cropped up as far as students being able to staff, which could be expensive, of course, to be able to train someone to be able to teach those courses, the certification to go along with that. And not just to mention that, the hosting of that course. And what I mean by that, to be able to have that course in a situation, it could be in a brick and mortar where a teacher's standing in front of them. It could be a blended environment. And so Virtual Virginia, we've done a lot of outreach over the last several years, which has been very rewarding. And so we have 7,000 students across the state of Virginia who are, this year alone, who are using our learning management system, and they are hosting it in their environment, which means a blended environment. They log into our system, and the course is there, but they have a teacher that stands in front of them and works with them in their environment. Now, we also teach the economics and personal finance course for individual students as well. We have many school divisions who opted to use that option as well. Of course, you can see we have the 41 divisions that are hosted by Virtual Virginia, and that varies from year to year as well. Okay, this is a graphic representation of those 41 divisions that we actually host the economics and personal finance course within our LMS. Okay, this brings me to my exciting bit of my presentation, our full-time high school pilot program. The last few years, there's been talk and requests for Virtual Virginia to offer a full-time pilot. Of course, we, just like you all, we are very much under our budgetary constraints. And so we knew that we needed to do that. We have school divisions that are struggling to be able to offer these courses. We have students that need the individualized learning, whether it be more of a credit recovery, or whether it be a specialized, an athlete, or a student that may be having a medical issue. We'd have a student that's actually going through chemotherapy and can't come to school. And so we work with all different types of situations. And so this started our pilot program. Now, I will tell you, just because I probably would get in trouble for saying this, but our pilot program was something that was in the works for quite a while. We were thinking about doing it and wanted to do it, but we really didn't get the permission to start the project until the end of May. And those of you that are in school divisions know that anytime you're thinking about a pilot project, you need a year to really plan for that. So I have to give kudos to the rest of my administrative team. They have been fantastic. This has been pulled together with the help of our partners at WHRO and our partners at Charlotte County, who are our fiscal agents. And we have have just managed to be able to pull it together. Now, it is small in scale. I will tell you we have about 92 students in the pilot program right now, and they range from one end of the state to the other. We, just like our other courses, we had a first come, first serve basis. And so that was the only fair way that we thought we could do that. And so geographically, we have students all over the state of Virginia that are working in the pilot program. Of course, with that came the idea that we had to train our teachers. Some of our AP teachers who have taught AP for many years, who are content experts in their field, actually volunteered. They wanted to be a part of the pilot, which was exciting to me. I think they really, I think some days they'll call me and say, whew, what did I get myself into? Because it's a lot of work to be able to learn, to be able to adjust to a different group of students as well. And so it's been very exciting in that component as well. Our first cohort didn't start until September the 8th. And the reason we did that, we wanted all the students to be on the same time frame. Typically at Virtual Virginia, we have rolling start dates. And we have one at the beginning of August, then we have one towards the end of August, and then of course we have one the Tuesday after Labor Day. And we do that. We try to closely align our calendar with school divisions. But as you can well imagine, 132 school divisions with dozens of schools within the school division trying to align to their bell schedule is crazy. And so we do our very best to try to work with the individual schools in that. Like I said, 92 students in the pilot right now, and we have 41 school divisions that are participating. We expect that to scale. I'll be honest with you, the immediate feedback I've gotten is they are thrilled. Some of the school divisions are finding that they are having homeschool students for the very first time enrolling in their division. And they are participating in the pilot. So we're actually having a different group. I said those numbers would change on that geographic chart about what kind of population we have. We're actually seeing a lot of interest in that as well. Questions that you may have about the full-time pilot before I share some other technology initiatives that we have coming through Virtual Virginia Department of Education? That's a very good question. And we are getting our feet wet. I'll be honest with you, there is a structure in place, and we hope to be able to do that with surveys. We're getting lots of feedback from administration. Of course, with any new pilot, we feel like there's going to be a huge learning curve. I'll be blatantly honest with you. As you can imagine, I deal in the student service part of our curriculum, and I have gotten lots of feedback, positive and suggestions for improvement, which we want. And so we're definitely going to be involving more surveys, talking to school divisions, and we want the feedback for that. So absolutely. I think that would be a great thing to do. I'll be honest with you, that is something that we're ready to start talking about, the evaluation process and the comparison and the brick and mortar. I will say an interesting thought. I had a parent that called the other day and asked a question and, said, well, wow, my student, this is the first time that they've ever been into a public school. And this is a tremendous amount of work. And I said, you're exactly right, but we mirror ourselves after your school divisions, our content. So that's definitely a question. We are definitely looking at content and that type of thing, and the rigor. We want to make sure the rigor is appropriate, which it needs to be appropriately, because we want to create those citizens that are career ready and ready to step out into the world and really make their difference. And we want to make sure. And I tell parents all the time, when a student finishes a 9th grade or an Algebra 1 course with us, they're ready for Algebra 2. And that's our goal. Our goal is to work with that student to make sure that they are ready and have the confidence to ready for the next level. We've built that foundation. Yes, that's a great question. This year, the pilot is free to those 41 school divisions. It is free because when the homeschool student comes in and enrolls in your division, yes, the school division does receive the ADM. Next year, I'm not sure what that's going to look like. We're looking at the framework. We know that we can do it pretty relatively inexpensive. We know we can do it for probably less than half of the ADM that you're going to get for that student. So we're trying to keep a low cost and really provide that service to the school divisions. Those numbers are not exact yet, but we are looking into those. Absolutely. Great question. The next bit of information is hot off the press. It hasn't even gone to your superintendents yet. We have decided, and Susan alluded to this about the Algebra 1, we know, and Algebra 1 is just the beginning. Brian Callahan and I were having a discussion about this is just the tip of the iceberg. In Virginia, as you well know, there is a shortage of licensed mathematics teachers. And so we, as a state, have a difficult time staffing those positions in our school divisions. And so with that, we had the idea that we have some phenomenal teachers at Virtue, Virginia, and teachers out in the state that we want to use as model teachers. So we are developing a pilot. A SUPES memo is going to go out today from the Department of Education, and we are going to be modeling through synchronous, interactive, and recorded instruction. We are going to be having our teachers model lessons in Algebra 1, different concepts, SOL Ulan with a framework. We are hoping this is going to get off the ground and running in the next month and a half. We have a very aggressive timeline. Like I said, we pride ourselves on being able to do that in an aggressive fashion. And so we're very excited about this. And just a keynote here, the information that's recorded. So if there's a substitute in the classroom who is really not well versed in that Algebra 1 concept, that's going to be recorded. And all the teachers across the state of Virginia through the eMediaVA, which is an online repository of different resources. It's fabulous. If you hadn't had a chance to look at it, please do. We partner with WHRO and with this process with the eMediaVA. Those lessons are going to be recorded. They're also going to be supplemental materials for the teacher to be able to use on the front end. As far as a proactive, the students are going to be given access to the materials to kind of say, well, I know this information, but I need some more help. And then on the back end, there's going to be some assessment pieces tagged along with those. So that's going to be all deposited into the eMediaVA. One last note, and then I promise I'll be done. I'm also working with the Governor's Office and Department of Education on the state broadband initiative. And that's been a hot topic. Of course, we can't have any of this blended and online environment and learning if we don't have proper infrastructure. And so I will tell you information, and I've been working with your superintendents and your tech directors across the state. We have just disseminated a survey to the school divisions to talk about their infrastructure, their Wi-Fi, and their costs to have the infrastructure and access points, because we are pursuing, with the governor's help and some other key state community stakeholders, pursuing funding to have statewide Wi-Fi, which is a huge deal. And so I encourage you to please talk to your tech directors and your superintendents and encourage them to fill out that survey so we can have that data back so we can accurately speak about the numbers that we're requesting and the funding that we want across the state of Virginia. So thank you so much for your time.